Thoughts about the afterlife. Chapter 12. Is God the Progenitor constrained to merely one son? Of course, now I'm inspired to look even further, beyond the probability that this offspring of God's I know as Jesus, the Spirit of His Son, the Christ, Jehovah, the Son of Man, has been, and potentially still is, actively creating other populated worlds. Beyond this. So I ask myself, why do I imagine that God has imparted His creative cosmic powers to only this one? The scriptures we have been given from the Tanakh, and the books of the New Covenant, don't specify that God had only one sole son. What the Apostle John described was God giving us His unique Son.
John 3, verse 16. God gave His Son.
Offspring, son.
Who had unique genetic makeup.
Mono, unique, only.
Μονογενή.
Yes, only begotten. But that's not saying, only. What do we know of this Christ? He was the Anointed One, and certainly not limited to the sense of the Jewish Messiah. He was the Lamb who was slain, whose blood was shed. I find life in the power of this risen Christ. His role is to enable a connection between God and the beings inhabiting this orb, this cosmos and universe. And, I would suggest, other worlds as well. I wonder about this Christ, and want to know more. So this Son we know as the Christ is, as it were, as best we can describe it, up there beyond this world. Ezekiel described a firmament up above, spread across the sky, like glittering ice, and a throne above it. See Ezekiel chapter 1, verses 22 to 26. And the old hymns would have it, that he continues to bear the scars of the nails. But that would mean I have to somehow picture this spirit being, bearing in a physical body those scars, from 2,000 years ago. No, he is a spirit being, who is active in other worlds, as well as ours. Earth surely can't be his only domain. When he meets in some sort of divine council of God, with other brothers so to speak, how might they see these scars? But then, do any of them have similar stories to tell? Does he have other plans of redemption for these other worlds he rules? Does he plan further sacrifices if needed, for others of these worlds? Such conjecture brings me face on with the mystery of Christ. He came down in the form of an anointing, alighting on and filling the son of Joseph and Mary. Then somehow, mysteriously, the death of this human substitute, this young man Yeshua in Palestine, signified the love and redemption of God, so that humans were ransomed when a sacrifice was made on their behalf. This I know, and have no trouble believing, yet I cannot comprehend how it works. Also, it's not made any easier when I read how the writer of the book of Hebrews understood the manner of the Anointed One dying.
Hebrews 9, verses 26 to 28. Christ came once and sacrificed himself. He was offered as a sacrifice one time to take away the sins of many.
Here's the point of it all. At the time when Jesus was alive in Palestine, the Son of Man continued as normal, without pause or interruption. It's not as if he abandoned his post and traveled to Earth for a time, and left all those other worlds to run themselves. He delegated the task down here to a human. The anointing that empowered this human was the full character of God. That power is made available to us. It's delivered as angelic living beings hover around us, awaiting access to us, as willing participants. The trouble, I suppose, is that preachers try to rev it up into a fantastical idea of revival, trying to access God's limitless power. Why not? For the preacher will be the lucky one who rides the wave of that revival. I notice, however, that this working of God's power seems meant to be more in the small things. Perhaps more in line with the small, the lean, the lowly. In other words, God's anointing pops up in unexpected places, and in all sorts of compartments of human hearts we might not think qualify for it. Now let me surmise about similar replications of Christ. Why should there not be other sons, or offspring of God? What I'm suggesting here in this, well, what started as a brief paper, is how God didn't simply finish being creative, being a creator. After all, that's what his divine nature is, being productive and innovative. He's not just sitting there gazing out. So I have begun to visualize that God, that force, that power, the source of energy, life and love, has without doubt replicated elsewhere this pattern that we know as his Son being Lord of the human heart. Other sons. Each one of those replications of sons will exhibit unique characteristics and, shall I say, personality. Each one is another intermediary in a divine role between the one God and those created for them to rule. Together, these sons might well form God's divine counsel. See Psalm chapter 82, verse 1, English Standard Version, and Job 1, verse 6. The description of the Christ we know is that his genetic makeup is unique to him. If God has numerous other sons, or offspring, will they also have their own genomic map? One related to our Christ, but a non-identical variation. However, since this will always be God's very own DNA, there will be some sort of equivalence. So how many more sons might God have, who are intermediaries between him and those civilisations? My mind readily evokes visions of countless, even infinite other offspring, with whom God is in close fellowship, as they seek his counsel and instruction, which they then pass on to innumerable angelic beings. But I'm drawn to verses such as Revelation chapter 4, verse 5, speaking of the 7 spirits of God, which my mind can readily imagine in this context as 7 sons. It's just as well I simply need to continue learning to respond to the one Son, Christ, who is my Lord. Each of these sons, these replications of Christ, rules their own worlds. Yet again my mind soars in meditation, to imagine that just as Christ is administering multiple worlds, so each one of those sons is creating not merely one civilization, but perhaps innumerable others of their own. So the participation that our planet has in this vast scenario could be likened to one grain of sand on a beach, as small as that compared to what else is out there. Perhaps this is being alluded to in Psalms, painting for us a picture of the overall God, with multiple other gods, whom he leads.
Psalm 89, verses 5 to 7. Let the heavens praise your wonders, O Lord, your faithfulness, in the assembly of the holy ones. For who in the skies can be compared to the Lord? Who among the heavenly beings is like the Lord, a God greatly to be feared, in the council of the holy ones, and awesome above all who are around him.
One can debate whether these offspring, these sons of God, these holy ones, were created, born, generated, whatever. But implicitly the analogy of a son suggests being birthed, created, originating from God the sole progenitor. The one God, the begetter of sons, who are the creators of ages and worlds.